You know, it's funny. Have you ever thought that the one thing you're most reliable for could actually be your biggest weakness? Well, today we're going to dive into this really cool idea from game theory. It's all about how being strategically unpredictable can give you this massive edge in, well, pretty much everything from sports to your job.
So it really boils down to this, right? Are you better off being predictable, or is there some serious power in being, well, a little random? It's a strategic choice we're all making all the time, even if we don't really think about it.
Okay, so to really get why unpredictability is such a big deal, we've got to look at the flip side first. What happens when you're too consistent? And we're going to start with a super high-stakes situation that shows exactly what we mean by the predictability trap.
All right, imagine this. The final seconds of a soccer game. It all comes down to a penalty kick. You've got the striker, who can shoot left or right, and you've got the goalie who has to pick a side and dive before the ball is even kicked. Now think about it. If that striker always goes for the left corner, well, the keeper's job just got a whole lot easier, right? And same goes for the goalie. If they always dive the same way, it's basically an open net. The moment one of them becomes predictable, the other one gets this massive, massive advantage.
And that right there, that's the perfect example of the problem with what game theorists call a pure strategy, which, is just a fancy way of saying always doing the same thing. Because pure strategies get exploited. Simple as that. Doesn't matter if it's sports or business or whatever, if your opponent knows what you're going to do next, you've kind of already lost the game.
Okay, so if being predictable is the trap, then what's the escape hatch? Well, the answer is all about being unpredictable on purpose. And of course, game theory has a name for it.
It's called a mixed strategy. And the key word, you got to remember this, is strategic. This isn't about just, causing chaos for no reason. It's about intentionally using randomness to keep your opponent completely off balance. So for our soccer player, that might mean deciding, okay, I'm going to shoot left 60% of the time and right 40% of the time. But the choice in any given moment is random. Now, the exact numbers depend on a bunch of stuff like the payoffs and what's at stake, but the big idea is just make it impossible for them to know what's coming next.
And this idea, it goes way beyond the soccer field. The power of a mixed strategy, you'll see it pop up all over the place in some really, really important ways. So let's check out a couple of real-world examples.
Okay, think about professional poker. If a player only goes all in when they have an amazing hand, what happens? Everyone else figures it out super fast and just folds, right? So to stop being so easy to read, the pros, they randomize their bets. Every now and then, they'll make a huge bet on a totally weak hand, a bluff, just to mess with everyone's heads and keep them guessing.
And you see this in marketing too. If a store always has its big sale on the last Friday of the month, what do? We learn to wait for it. We just ignore all their other ads until that one day. But the smart marketers, they throw in surprise flash sales at random times to keep us on our toes and, actually paying attention.
And here's where it gets really serious. Think about airport security. Forces at places like Ben Gurion Airport and Tel Aviv are famous for this. They completely randomize their security checks. They'll randomly change how many people get pulled aside or what questions they ask. And why? Because it stops terrorists from just watching, finding a pattern, and figuring out how to beat the system. In a case like this, being unpredictable is, literally, a lifesaver.
Okay, so poker, airport security. This is all really interesting stuff. But what does it have to do with you? Well, let's bring this whole idea right into your workplace and see how you can actually use this to get a leg up in your career. You can use this at work in some pretty simple but super effective ways. Take email, for example. If you're the person who always replies within 5 minutes, what happens? People start to think every single one of their emails is a 5-alarm fire. But if you mix up your response times, you start to train them that, hey, an instant reply is reserved for the really important stuff. You can do the same thing in meetings. Sometimes be the one with all the ideas. Other times, just sit back and listen. Or maybe with your projects, you shift your focus around a bit to keep things and your own input fresh.
Now hold on. The point here is not to be flaky or unreliable. Obviously, you still have to hit your deadlines and do your core job. That's a given. This is all about the other parts of your job, the parts where you have some choice. It's about keeping your leverage. When people can't predict your every little move, they can't just take your time for granted. It puts you back in the driver's seat.
So, we've looked at the trap of being too predictable and the serious power you get from mixing things up. Let's boil all of this down to one final, really important thought.
If there is just one thing you take away from all this, let it be this.
In any situation where there are stakes, predictability is a weakness. End of story. And that means being unpredictable when you do it on purpose is one of your greatest strengths. So I'll leave you with this question to chew on. What's your most predictable habit? And maybe more importantly, what would happen if you threw in a little strategic randomness? How could that change the game for you?